It's a lot. But one of the reasons that I'm so excited to speak to you is that you bring a different dimension to the life overseas story, because you had the privilege and pleasure of studying in the Caribbean. Is that right?
Yes, I did.
Yeah. So I'm really curious, what made you want to study in the Caribbean? Was that something that you've always had in mind?
I've always wanted to live in the Caribbean. I knew that for sure. When I was younger, like my school life, I actually started out school life in Jamaica. So yeah, I've always known I wanted to live there. And at the time where I was in life, I wanted to go back and study. So it kind of just worked hand in hand with each other. So I started looking for places to study. And initially I wanted to go to America. But I traveled to America and I was like, no, this isn't it. So yeah, I went with the Caribbean option.
Nice. And so what was it like going to school in Jamaica? How old were you when you attended school there?
I was around nursery age, so probably about 3 or 4. Yeah, it's called basic school over there. So where we would possibly call it, I think, nursery over here.
So the seed was sown quite early for you. That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so what was the process of applying to university in the Caribbean like? Did you do that straight after school, or did you work and then apply later?
Okay, so I went to college in England, and then I applied to go university in England. I done a year. I didn't really like it. So that's when I started exploring like options outside of England. When I wanted to go to study in the Caribbean, I contacted them to ask them how the application process is, and they let me know that it generally opens up, if I'm correct, around November, January.
Okay.
Between that time. And so I had to send in, they have like an online portal. So you would create an account and then you would submit like what courses you want to do. And then you have to send supporting documents. So my supporting documents that I had to send had to be signed legally, because I didn't actually send the original.
Oh, wow.
Because my friend was going to Barbados at the time, so I didn't want to send my original copies of like my birth certificates and my certificates. So yeah, I had to have them notary signed. And then so submitted all the documents, and then they get back to you with what courses you are eligible for. If I'm corrected, I think it's the same like England, around March or April. So yeah, I was accepted onto the course. Amazing news. And then yeah, so I just started my process of like moving, buying stuff that I needed to buy, figuring out where I needed to stay. And I didn't go the conventional way, where I went and I stayed on campus. I didn't do that.
Okay.
A family member of mine was living in Barbados at the time. So I initially moved over and stayed with them for a little while. And then I moved into like my own apartment.
Nice. Yeah. And so just to go back a little bit, the process of applying, was there any issue about you having GCSEs and A-levels in terms of like the parallel with what a traditional Caribbean qualification would have been? Was that all fine?
No, I think because it's like an accredited course that I did, it's kind of across the board, so they'll look at its equivalent. So like BTEC, I think I had actually even done a BTEC national, but because it's equivalent to 3 A-levels, it's used as the same. Over there they would call it like an associate degree.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. So, yeah. And then in terms like some of the sort of preconceptions that people have about Caribbean bureaucracies, that it can be quite slow and difficult, and having applied to university in the UK and applied to university in the Caribbean, is it similar? Were you pleasantly surprised by how streamlined it was, or was it a little bit more challenging than it could have been?
Yeah, it wasn't that challenging. One thing is that they don't have a UCAS portal. Okay. So because they only really have like one major university in Barbados at the time. So I was applying directly to the University of the West Indies, as opposed to like applying to a few universities to be accepted. So yeah, it was a bit more straightforward in that. Yeah, I remember just applying for the courses that I wanted to do, sending the supporting documents and just waiting for a response. And they sent me a letter to say that I've been accepted on the course. And yeah, that was it. It wasn't much more to it.
Yeah, nice. And so had you been to Barbados before?
Yeah, I did. I traveled with my friends and I did crop over a few times.
Oh, nice.
So yeah.
Yeah. And so how did the experience of studying there differ from just like going there on holiday? What did you discover about the island that you weren't aware of before?
I always say to people, living and visiting is always a complete different experience. One thing I must admit, I'm not a beach person.
Oh,
Like the beach was at the end of my road and I just hardly went to the beach.
Wow.
Like I walked past it. I love the scenery. That's just the type of stuff. I like looking at the beach. I like going to like restaurants on the beachfront, but I don't necessarily like the sand and stuff. So I just kind of avoid the beach as much. So yeah, that shocked a lot of people in England when I told them that, because they're like, oh my gosh, like we go on holiday to the beach.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the cost of living, I think when you go on holiday, you plan to spend. So you put money aside to actually spend on holiday. But when you're actually living there, you realize how costly things can actually be, especially when you're living off like a certain amount a month. The food is very expensive over in Barbados. Yeah, so food shopping is very expensive. And even for me personally, I feel like even travel can be quite expensive sometimes, because at least here in England, we have like an Oyster card system. So even though people complain that London traveling is quite expensive, it's capped. And you could get on and off as many buses and trains as you please for the week or for the month. But in the Caribbean, every time you get on and off transport, you have to pay. So it can add up if you are going quite far.
Yeah. And so in terms of your experience, I know you didn't live on campus, but were there many other international students? Did you all hang out together, or were you sort of intermixed with like the local students?
No, I actually found that quite hard. Okay. I found that experience quite hard because in university there was like island groups.
Oh wow.
So they had like the Grenadian island groups, they had Jamaica, they had St. Lucia. Yeah, so they were kind of interactive. So then I was kind of just like the English outsider. Yeah, but I was lucky because there actually was another English girl at the time that was studying. So me and her became like really good friends. Yeah, so I suppose we made our little group together.
Wow, that's shocking. So just one other. What about Americans? Were there many other Americans or Canadians, or was it primarily Caribbean?
No. Interesting. No. Maybe to like more the end of university, I realized they kind of integrated a lot more, and there was like people coming from Spanish countries and other countries when I was leaving. But when I first started, no, there wasn't much.
Interesting. And so did the Jamaicans embrace you because your parents are Jamaican, or was that it wasn't enough to like?
No. No.
Interesting. And so what was that experience like? Because I guess there's always that dilemma, whereas in the UK, people, the general populace here sees you as Caribbean, but in the Caribbean, they see you as English. How did you end up resolving that?
I don't know. I think I just took each day as it came. I obviously met friends in class. So I had like class friends. And then I used to go out quite a lot as well at the beginning. So I met friends outside of that. And then funny enough, one of my housemates, I was living by myself when I first moved there. And then I met a friend on the bus. and she was Jamaican. So me and her ended up living together for a while. So yeah.
Nice. And then you told me before we started speaking that at some point you decided to transfer from, is it Cave Hill in Barbados?
Yeah, Cave Hill. Yeah.
To
Mona.
Jamaica, to Mona. Yeah. Why did you decide to do that? And what was the difference?
Well, one of my parents were relocating at the time back to Jamaica. So I just decided to go for the year and just support them in that. So I just went, and most of my family are actually in Jamaica. So.
And how would you describe the difference between the two university experiences?
Oh, I love Jamaica. Like,
okay.
I remember when I went, and the first semester I was like, oh, I should have done all my years here. Like, I would have had so much. There's so much more to do. They're just, when people ask me, oh, which one's better, I'm kind of like, they're complete different islands. So like, Barbados has its qualities about it and Jamaica has its qualities about it. But I think for my personality, I'm more fit in with Jamaica's qualities. Yeah. They're very like upbeat. There's a lot to do. There's a lot of clubs. There's a lot more on actual campus itself. It's like maybe 10 times bigger than the Barbados campus in itself, which is understandable. So yeah, it's just a lot more. But at that time, unfortunately, because I was in my final year, I kind of was just concentrating on just getting out of university. So
interesting. And so was Mona more international at all, or was it?
Yeah, there was actually. Yeah, I saw Chinese people. I saw Americans. I saw who else? There's some Spanish. So there was a lot more.
Nice.
Variety.
And then in terms of costs, how does studying in the Caribbean compare to the cost that you'll pay in the UK or in the US?
Well, currently, I didn't go there as an international student, so I'm actually of Jamaican descent.
Nice.
So I have Jamaican citizenship as well. So I actually studied as a Jamaican citizen. So the cost is cheaper than English university at the moment.
Okay.
It's cheaper. The yearly cost is much cheaper. The cost of living, probably much cheaper than London living. But yeah, it was cheaper. But I didn't get any support from like scholarships or anything. So it was mainly like my parents. So if you don't have that assistance, if you don't have any like support system back home to help you navigate through that journey, it is going to be quite challenging. But yeah, it was much cheaper.
Right. And so does it basically work that if you're a CARICOM citizen, then you pay one rate, or is it specific to the island?
I think if I'm right, I think Trinidad, Barbados, and Jamaica, because they have the universities on their island, pay a rate. So it is a CARICOM rate, but I think they pay a certain rate. And then there's the other CARICOM islands that have their set rate because they're CARICOM islands. And then there's an international rate.
Right. Okay. So that's good to know. That's one thing for folks of Caribbean descent to get sorted. Get your CARICOM, get your passport sorted to kind of cut those prices down. Nice. And so why did you decide to come back?
Why did I decide to come back? I think more so for like development reasons in work. Yeah. So over there in the Caribbean at the moment, it's changing. It is changing a lot, but at the moment I find they're very degree focused when you're looking for a job. So it's either you have to have a degree in this or you have to have a master's degree in that. Whereas over here in England, from my personal experience, you can get opportunities even if you don't have a degree. There's different avenues to get the opportunities that you want. So yeah, that was mainly why I came back. Plus, at some point, I do want to return to the Caribbean. So I want to come to England and get some development and actually bring that skill back to the Caribbean to help with the development.
Nice. And remind us, what did you study? And in an ideal world, what would you like to do back in the Caribbean?
I studied economics. And yeah, back in the Caribbean, I would like to work in possibly healthcare.
Okay.
In operational aspect of healthcare, and also just business in general, like because I'm really good with like relationship building and just connecting people with each other and stuff like that. So yeah.
Yeah, nice. And one of the things that we've spoken about is how you want to kind of use your experience of having lived in the Caribbean to kind of share that knowledge with other folks who might be looking to move there and set up their own businesses. I know it's kind of like early days, but I'm going to push you out there and tell us a bit about those plans, because I think it's really exciting. Really.
Yes, so I'm planning to start a platform. It'll kind of be like an interviewing platform. And I'll be interviewing people that are interested in like relocating to the Caribbean for development reasons, mainly. So we'll be exploring what areas need help and how we can go about helping and assisting. Living in the Caribbean, I've been able to meet a lot of people and make a lot of connections in itself. So that comes hand in hand with what I'm doing, because I'll be able obviously to like introduce people to each other if need be. So yeah, just look out for my channel, because that will be coming soon. Nice. I'm looking forward to that. So
yeah, definitely. And so just before we wrap up, what 3 pieces of advice would you give to someone who's thinking about studying in the Caribbean, whether it's at an undergrad level or master's level? What kind of 3 tips would you offer?
Okay, so firstly, I would say do as much research as you can before you go, so you know what you're getting yourself into. And the research should be about cost of living, how much, because you have to eat. So check how much it is for shopping, check how much rent is, traveling, how far you need to live from the university, if not on campus, how much your student fees are going to be, and just social fees as well. Because I think when a lot of people map in costs, they don't map in social fees, because you do want to go out and you do want to have fun with your friends and stuff. So social fees is actually really important. So yeah, have a clear vision of why you're doing it. And my last piece of advice is be scared and do it anyway.
Yeah. Nice. Oh, that's so exciting. Well, yeah, no, I can't wait to see what comes up with your interview series. I think it's so needed to kind of start that conversation and give people the information so that they can kind of hit the ground running when they move. Is there a social channel that we can follow you on, or should I just update people once you go live? What's the best way?
Yeah, so follow me on Instagram at the moment. My Instagram is Love Smith, and I will be doing updates on that. As soon as the YouTube channel is up, I'll post an update on that. And yeah, as well through Zoe, I will let her know. So I'll get you to update as well and let them know when that's up and running.
Yeah, perfect. Oh, well, thank you so much for taking the time out to speak. It's been really, really interesting to kind of just share a different aspect of life in the Caribbean. So yeah, I hope it inspires people to kind of just take that leap and do things a little bit differently, because yeah, studying in the Caribbean versus being stuck in the